So in spite of the rather technical title, in fact, I'm going to tell you a story about this. I learned a lot from this experience, and maybe you'll pick up one or two things as well. Wellington Free Ambulance is based in the lower part of the North Island. As you can see, the regional population is just over 500,000. That's 10% of New Zealand's population, and therefore we have 10% of the workload. So it's a small service, I thought, although when I went to Seattle, I realized that there are lots of smaller services in the US, smaller county services. And we're probably not much different from ACT, I hear, from Howard. Now, the thing about working with ambulance services is that I've worked with 5, and I've worked in Wellington with 4 different chief executives. And every time an administration changes, there's a different philosophy that comes in, different focus, different goals, maybe to some degree. And 5 or 6 years ago, we hit a new era, and the era was austerity. This happened before the GRA was developed, before Resuscitation Academy, before high-performance CPR. But it caused us a problem, me in particular, because at that time we were using life-pack defibrillators, the 12s and the 15s, and I had a very experienced intensive care paramedic, who was also a flight paramedic, who made a hobby of actually auditing the code stat printouts that he got from cardiac arrests. And he did it really very well. He gave good feedback to the crews, and they really appreciated that, and it was good. But in the era of austerity, his executive manager started to apply increasing pressure to him, asking him why he was doing this code stat stuff. And then I was asked one day, why is he wasting his time doing code stats? And the pressure built up to the point at which the ICP left, and then we had no cardiac arrest audit. What was I going to do? Well, I felt a business case was the only way forward. And I knew that high-performance CPR was on the horizon. And therefore I thought, right, how can we do this? How can we make a case to reinstate the audit with high-performance CPR? We don't have high-performance CPR with our current equipment. And to the rescue came AUT University in Auckland and Zoll Medical. And I'm very grateful to both of them. Zoll in particular loaned us their X-series defibrillator for a period of 3 months, not just one. They loaned us 10 of them. And I thought rather naively, well, we see 200 cardiac arrests in a year, so if we have the defibrillators for 3 months, then theoretically we should see 50 cases, and that'll be a good number. No point in doing any power calculations, because we just have to do what we can within the 3 months. But then things started to get a little bit more challenging. For the study, I produced the information sheet that went out to ICPs mainly, but also some paramedics. Because training is expensive, because you have to pay, obviously, for the education hours, I had to rely on staff who really wanted to contribute, who were interested, who would often give up some of their own time to come to the training sessions, which were run by Zoll, as well as some AUT staff. So I recruited 24 ICPs and paramedics, and the inclusion criteria for the study were arrests of cardiac etiology. We excluded trauma, we excluded children, and we excluded cases in which there was incomplete data collection. So the limitations then started to appear. And being single-handed as a medical director with nobody directly to delegate to, I would often look over my shoulder, but there was nobody there. I realized that I was getting increasingly challenged. So we had to have both Zoll and life-pack defibrillators on each vehicle because of the staff that were not trained in using the Zoll. So only 10 of 15 ambulances during the day were equipped with the Zoll defibrillator. We had ICPs only on a maximum of 5 of those ambulances. We had 24 trained staff, as you know, that's 6 per shift, but we couldn't attend all the cardiac arrests with that number of trainees. And then one thing I hadn't appreciated is that when the Zoll arrived at the cardiac arrest, if there was already a life pack attached to the patient, there was a natural reluctance to swap the equipment over. The outcome was that in the 3 months, we actually managed to generate 20 sets of cardiac arrest data. So what we wanted to do was determine the time requirements for, first of all, analysis of the CPR data, identifying the attending crews, generation of a report, and preparation of feedback emails to the crew members. One of the things I didn't expect as well was that the ethical committee did not approve feedback directly to the ambulance staff. They felt that this could be damaging to them, which was a notion that I couldn't find supported by anybody I know, but I had to accept it. So we calculated the time right from receiving the data to actually getting to the point of pressing the button to send the emails to the crew, but we didn't actually press that button. So it was more of a feasibility study, really, because I was thinking in time we would get high-performance CPR running, and then we can do the job properly. But we've got to make an argument about the costing. We've got to make a justification for restarting cardiac arrest audit. So on return to the ambulance station with the Zol defibrillators, all the data was sent to the cloud. The data included all the usual things that you would expect now for high-performance CPR, as listed there. And then I thought, who's going to do the data analysis? We don't have anybody. But there was somebody lurking in the background. He had filled in as another ICP when the first ICP was on leave. And over a period of time, he'd actually, without formal training, processed about 100 CodeStat reports and given feedback. He also was familiar with the Zol X series because that is the defibrillator on our helicopter. So I enrolled him, and he took the data from the server and from the patient report forms and worked out the start and finish times for analysing each case. So although we had 20 sets of data, 2 cases had to be excluded because they were pre-arrest states and the patient did not progress to cardiac arrest because the treatment was good and they did well. One case we excluded because the cardiac arrest ran for so long, it was 120 minutes, that it actually was more than 2 standard deviations outside the data for the rest of the study. As the cardiac arrest lengthened, you can see from this slide, there was unexpectedly an increase in the duration of the time taken for analysing the data. And here we've got the data assembled. And the means, which is what we focused on, looking at the numbers of patients we had, are in the bright yellow column there. And there are a few interesting factors like the analysis time, the duration of the arrest, the total CPR time, and then finally the cost per report was calculated based on the time, the duration of the arrest, and the analysis time. And we did that on the next slide by using the cost of employing an ICP to do this work, which in New Zealand dollars is $37.44 per hour, which gave a mean cost for each report of $17, a grand total of $17 per case, which meant that for a year, 200 cases, the cost was only $3,500, which in the context of other costs for education, audit, and training, really was nothing very much. The good news is that we now have 3 ICPs doing this work. They're getting into it at the moment, they're getting used to it. They're preparing for when we have high-performance CPR, and we'll have a new defibrillator that will allow high-performance CPR at the end of the year, the start of next year. And so I could do no better than actually quote from Arne Duncan, who was the Secretary of State for Education under the Obama administration, when he said, education is more than just an expense. And my other message to you guys is when it comes to the 10 steps, never give up. Thank you very much.